What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Family First, the Unbroken podcast. Today, I want to discuss a topic that's, sort of the reason I created this, but it's going to focus on female, while I will create more that focuses on, males and those seeking to be husbands, right? But this one is going to be dedicated to those women who are already wives, seeking to be wives, and even what husbands should look for, right, in their future partners. And there's not many times that I got to see this, but I do know a couple now who have followed the Lord, right? Both of them following the Lord before they decided to share their life with each other. And you could just see the smooth transition, the way that they interact, the way that they follow the Lord. And a lot of that has been a clear indication of what's supposed to happen. And so it's been really awesome to see, but a lot of us really don't go through that. And I think because most of us go into relationships just being unequally yoked. And I know a lot of times people use that to describe, people that aren't on their level money-wise, or people at a different stage of life. But biblically, right, unequally yoked just means that you guys are basically going in different directions, right? So naturally, right, as husband and wife come together, it's not supposed to be super hard, right? It's supposed to be a peaceful transition because both of you guys follow God and both of you guys are on one accord. A lot of times what we see, right, we think that the challenges in the other partner, and not to say, as you sort of start, parenting and just living, life, that there aren't going to be challenges, because we do understand that the enemy hates godly marriage. So you may see some attacks come, but most of the time it's because that we're just like not in one accord. And that's because as a husband, you went out and, or a male, right? You went out and you found, right, what the world says or the world sees as being a wife, right? But it wasn't, the person that you were supposed to end up with. And that's because even though you guys were in love or lust or whatever it was, that's probably not the person that you needed according to like scripture and being in a godly marriage, right? A lot of times, we just see on social media, we've heard from our dads or uncles or people that we know that were married, and some of them describe marriage as just chaos, and some of us have even been in it and have not, had the easiest time with a marriage. And that's because it was ungodly. And I get to come to it from both angles, because when I originally got married, I knew the Lord, but I wasn't really walking with him. I also didn't really know much about marriage, right? Getting married at 22, right? But I seen my dad and mom be married, and grandparents. And so naturally it was just something I did. You're supposed to, find somebody that you love, and then you guys just figure it out. And that makes marriage significantly harder and going through. Now, I will say I got really blessed. I got genuinely lucky, right? I don't think anything's coincidence or luck, but I do believe that, God had some sort of favor or calling. And so at least when I started to lead my family in the way that, the Lord wants us to lead, and, that I begin leading, my wife also began to follow, which is mostly not the case, right? Because when they find you and, you're changing and they're like, oh, well, I don't know if I like, this part about, whether it's, the celebrating of some of the holidays, whether it is, going to church consistently, like whether it's ministering to people because I got to stop in the middle of a grocery store, or I got to be on Bible study while she might be putting the kids to sleep. A lot of those things can be a hindrance of things that God has for you, right? If you get into a relationship with a partner who can't see exactly what you're doing and don't really understand what's going on, right? So this is super important, right? And some of these, and we're going to break down like 7 of the things that I've seen, or maybe it's 6, right? But we're going to break those down a little bit, and just to gauge, what to look for when you are either trying to become a wife, you are looking for a wife, or you're just in the middle of a marriage and you want to be able to figure out, like, what can I do better? How am I supposed to be? Right. And so now I think moving forward, right, we're going to talk about, like what it actually means to, be a virtuous and righteous woman, and certain things to pay attention to. And so the first one is going to be like dressing modestly. Right? There's a couple of scriptures, and I'm sorry I don't know them off my head, so I had to write them down. So hopefully that you can go look and maybe I'll be able to put them in the video afterwards. But Proverbs 12:4 and 1 Timothy 2, 9 through 10, right? It talks about a woman dressing modestly. And just coming from my angle, anytime a woman dresses modestly, right, it's because they understand that they have value, right? They have inherent value, right? So whether it be their beauty, and, they want to keep that hidden for their partner, right? The one that they want to truly show off for. So if there is a woman that you're interested in, or a woman that you are, and you are dressing in provocative clothing, making maybe some people lust and do things that are ungodly, right? We need to make sure that we steer clear of those things, because that is just one of, like, when you're looking for a righteous woman or you're trying to become one, that's one of the first things that we want to pay attention to. The second is going to be the vanity, the materialism, right? So that comes in many different forms, right? So vanity is just anything that is not led by God. It's vain, right? It's here today, gone tomorrow. So if they're constantly talking about, oh, I want this sort of bag, or I want to live here, or I want to drive this type of car. And not that those things are inherently bad, because if God has blessed you with the ability to go out and earn resources, that's, between you and God. And if you so happen to get a house or a nice car or whatever it is, that just is what it is. But somebody who's only paying attention to those things, right? Male or female, but specifically since we're talking about females, right? Somebody that's only paying attention to that stuff, right? You have to figure out where their head is, because marriage is a covenant with God, right? You guys are together. So if one of you are doing one thing and the other person's doing another thing, right? He already says a house divided, right, cannot stand. And so if you guys are constantly going separate ways on issues, is just not going to work out. So the vanity and the materialism, you have to just make sure that there's some sort of focus that you guys have on God's purpose for your individual lives. The next one is being led by a man, right? So father, uncle, brother, those are going to be the keys when you're looking for an actual wife. Like, where, how does she know how to be loved by a man? How does she know how to become disciplined? How to respect a man's authority? And this is not one of those red pill talking pieces or anything like that. This is just through the biblical lens, right? We understand that if you have a man in your life, and you can just look at even earthly statistics, right? When you have a man in your life, you're more able to be led by another man. You're also more willing to have structure and submit to whatever that structure is from another godly man. And so while this is inherently truthful, I understand that some people are going to see it as unfair, because as a child, right, it's not really up to you to be able to choose whether you have your father in your life or not, right? That's between your father, your parents. And so I do understand how that part of it is unfair, and it's still, it still is though. And so if you are in that position, it's going to be up to you to go in, find a role model, find somebody who can really guide you into becoming, a righteous woman, somebody that can cover you, right? If you have a brother or an uncle, because the thing is, just having male friends or, even a boyfriend or something that you can confide in, like, there is a chance that you might follow his lead, but chances are, if you haven't seen it put into work, it's going to be very hard to do so, because a dad, an uncle, a brother, right, they have no sort of intimate feelings, sexual feelings towards the woman, right? So towards you. And that's why you learn those different skills from those guys, because they're going to give you the things that you need without having without expecting anything in return. And a lot of times, like, if somebody on the outside gives you information, it could be they want to sleep with you. It could be they're pursuing some sort of relationship with you. It's just not really going to be genuine. And eventually you're going to figure out, man, this is all transactional. And so being led by a father or a brother or an uncle will allow you to, have the structure and understand that a man is not here to keep you down, is not here to, put you down or just take care of your stuff and you listen and be subservient. It's not just that. It's not that stuff, right? As men, we want to be able to take care of women. We want to be able to lead. And if we're not being led, it is very difficult, right, to be able to get somebody to, be submissive to you so that you can do what is in their best interest. I hope that made sense. I know I went around, but I'm trying to deliver that stuff with a bit of savor. Next is going to be this sort of goes along with the vanity and the materialism, even some of the dressing modestly portion, but all of the fake body parts, right? So God made you exactly who He wanted you to be, right? God didn't make mistakes. So, if you have big areas of your body, if you have small areas of your body, right? If you are a certain thing that, God put on you to allow you to be who he called you to be, right? I think that's exactly what that's for. So it shouldn't be in our nature to be able to change some of those things. And if somebody is changing those things, it is a huge red flag, right? So we need to check out, like if that person does have, things that they don't like about themselves, right? And while that's not inherently bad, because I think we all have some of that in us, to be able to change it, which means that you're focused on the vanity part, right? I want, people to like me more. I want people to see me as somebody that's beautiful or give me attention. And so those could be real red flags and, a gateway to wanting to receive that attention. So that's super important that we understand and we know, like we start to notice those things. Career focus. Now, people, they go into college, they come out, and it's like, if you're just looking for something so that you can live this certain lifestyle, it might not necessarily be inherently bad, but most of the time we know when you are career driven and you're looking for a partner, especially a virtuous and righteous woman, it is not in your best interest because there's too many things, right? Like if you're looking to create a family, right, somebody's going to have to be home to raise the children, right? You definitely don't want to send your kids out to an actual daycare if you can afford and you put yourself in the position to be able to nurture them as the mother, right? And then as a husband, right, you take care of those duties. If somebody's trying to compete for position, right, even though God made us inherently different, he made us so that we complete one another, and you have two people fighting for the same role, it just is not going to work out. And for the people, I know this tends to be one of those topics because they're like, oh, well, I can do things. What happens if, I can't do anything and then we get divorced or anything like that, right? So virtuous and righteous women don't think like that because they understand what a man's love is like, what it's supposed to be like, and they also understand the role, right? And so when you're finding a godly man, they know exactly what that looks like. And so, read like from reading, from scripture, from, dad, brother, being, having some sort of guidance from even a pastor or a minister or a mentor that teaches you how to do that. And, the career focus is a lot of that stuff's mostly vain anyway, if it's not God's work, because truly the only reason men seek their purpose and go after it is because they know that they're going to need those resources to provide for a family. And if somebody's already doing that, then as a virtuous, righteous woman, you might need to work for your husband or, gain skills on the side, even if it's like teaching a class as a substitute from time to time. There's different ways to do it without just saying, oh, I'm just supposed to stay here and take care of the babies, which is the most important role anyway, because as we can see society's decline and just the degradation of society, it is very important, almost the most important, to be able to have a woman that stays home and nurtures and make sure the kids aren't getting in trouble and doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. And then lastly, focused on somebody who's chaste, right? We understand that we get into different areas where, or even stages of our lives where maybe somebody was in a relationship for a long time and, just things happened and they might not be a virgin just because of where you are in life. But getting somebody who abstains as much, or doesn't have a very vulgar, out there sexual past is going to be super important. Now, this is important for a multitude of reasons, right? So how somebody treats their body is going to be very important, because if you treat your body like that, there's definitely some sort of deep-seated issues. And that goes for a multitude of things. But if you don't maintain like sexual temperance and purity, it just means that there's probably something deeper going on. Also, the biggest thing is being able to connect to your partner. So we all understand that these are soul ties. And anytime I sleep with somebody, right, I'm in a soul tie, right? Because that's the way that God made, sexual relations. Because we're supposed to be in love with the person that we lay down with, willing to protect and provide and die for. And if you're doing that and you're giving your body to random strangers, it's not a good bet for long-term success. And so just like just like credit history, just like a GPA, all of those are things from our past, right? And the only way to truly have some sort of understanding of who your person is to see what decisions did they make in the past and what is that like in the future. This is not saying that somebody who didn't have a lot of sexual temperance is going to be, that forever, right? Because we know when we get in the presence of God and we find Jesus that we change. And so, but when you're looking for virtuous and righteous women, righteous women, it's going to be super important that you understand, what exactly you're looking for. And so that was the things that I was going to talk about today. But also understand, right, some of these scriptures. Proverbs 21:9. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. So being a wife means that you're not quarrelsome, right? You're submitting to your man. Proverbs 31:10, right, everybody? I want to be a Proverbs 31 wife. An excellent wife who can find, she is far more precious than jewels, right? So he already understands that you guys have greater worth, far greater worth that you're born with. It's inherent, right? More precious than jewels. 1 Peter 3:1-2. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respect and pure conduct, right? This means that you guys have the power to change men, right? That's exactly what that means. So it's like everybody wants to be in, the powerful position all the time, right? But a lot of power is shifted, right? Men have power over women. Women have power over men. That's exactly what it's supposed to be, right? Because if I give the woman what she wants and she gives me what I want, then we always work in unison, right? And God says that to us. So instead of trying to fight, we can come together and be one. And so when you're looking through this and you're watching this video, think about the person that is in your life. Think about the person that you are, right? And who exactly you're looking for, what that godly marriage is supposed to look like when going to find a wife, possibly being in it, possibly becoming a wife, right? What exactly does that look like? And, I shared some scripture with you, broke it down, but all of these come from, biblical principle. And so as you're diving through, ask God for guidance on, what he wants you to work on most in your life, so that if this is something that he has for you, you can become that person, right? Or you can find that person. And so thank you guys for joining today. Once again, this is Family First, the Unbroken Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Newton, and I'll see you guys later.